Namaskar. Welcome to this session of Straight Drive Panorama. I am Sudhanshu Mani. Friends, as you know, in Panorama, we cover just about anything of human interest. Today, we will talk about self help and writing in the background of widespread gloom and despair in these COVID times. We have with us Mr. Ravi Valluri, officer of Indian Railway Traffic Service, now serving as Principal Chief Commercial Manager in Chennai, Southern Railway, a thinker, an author, and an art of living teacher. Ravi has written 6 books: The Matter of the Mind, Make the Mind, Mount Kailasa, The Infinite Mind, co-authored, NaMo 303 Words to Victory, Indian Stories, Images and Thoughts, and Heartbreak at Coffee Shop, an array of tales. This book we had discussed about with him in this program earlier. He blogs at WordPress, Speaking Tree, and writes for Free Press Journal, Mumbai. In Heartbreak at Coffee Shop, uh, Ravi told us, and I have of course read the book, it was a series of short stories, drabbles, and plays woven around original stories, spin-offs, and real-life instances, casting spotlight on the darker side of the coin with a unique point of view. And now, his next book, Magic of the Mind, is under print. It was to be launched some days back, but because of COVID, it is postponed only by some days. Should be available very shortly. Friends, the title intrigued me, particularly in these times which need mental resolve along with physical vigor and fettle. Welcome, Ravi.
Good evening, sir. Namaskar.
So, yeah. So, Ravi, let me indulge you a bit, and not having read the book yet, I'm sure I'll soon get a copy gratis. I'm
Yes.
sure, let us see where my anticipatory musings wander around. So, in Midsummer's Night Dream, the famous lines of Helena, love looks not with the eyes but with the mind. So, it is spoken in jealousy. It meant what should matter is what's inside. दिमाग अर्श पे है खुद जमी पे चलते हैं सफर गुमा का है और यकीन पे चलते हैं या फिर दिलो दिमाग की जिद है कि अपने घर में रहो. गौर करें कि nowadays these COVID times कि दिलो दिमाग की जिद है कि अपने घर में रहो, मिजाज कहता है हर वक्त एक सफर में रहो. So, Ravi, before you stop me from jumping the gun way out of line, trying to find something even before reading the book, let me come to you about the book. But before we talk of the book, a simple question first. How has lockdown affected the publishing industry? Let me tell you, I am a sufferer myself as my 6th book. Incidentally, only the second, which is not getting published through an institution like Indian Railways or Railway Museum, has been going through a spiral, but we are not going to talk about that. COVID, lockdown, writing, and publishing. What's your experience?
So, as far as the publishing part is concerned, it took a big hit in the beginning. Then it opened up, and on e-platforms, the books were available. But the problem was getting the books to bookstores, big bookstores. That was the problem unless one is a really celebrated author. So, as an author, one would like books to be in shops, say airports or
Yeah.
Crossword, these kind of shops, and Walden. When it's not there, that pinch is there. Once again, because of this lockdown during the second wave, it has taken a hit. But there are other platforms from where books are being sold, like audiobooks. I had written, this is my eighth book, that is The Magic of the Mind. The seventh book was called The Divine Whispers, uh,
Hmm.
365 Spiritual Quotes of Sri Ravi Shankar. Now, the lead start is the publisher. It's among the top 10 literary agents and publishers of India. So they have now converted it into an audiobook. Uh,
Okay.
they are going to launch it very shortly in form of an audiobook. So there are other forums where the books are available.
Okay.
As I mentioned, the traditional form of getting the books into stores is a problem because they already have an inventory which has not been sold. But as far as reading and writing is concerned, people are very much interested. There is no doubt about it.
Okay. Yeah. So audiobooks, I know a lot of people going to work, coming back from work. Uh, they they obviously can't read, so they have this audiobook or there it's very important that the reader is gets inside the book and reads. So how did you get a professional reader for your book, or is it,
Uh,
have you read it yourself,
which
the audiobook, your book?
uh, I my son, he keeps producing various podcasts and others. So
Wonderful.
I've been listening to them. And in fact, he had heard about certain books like Michelangelo and written by Walter Isaacson. So
Mhm.
he read them through audiobooks, and he found them to be very interesting. Uh, I haven't really read an audiobook, I mean, heard an audiobook, but that inspired me to read these books.
No, what I meant was for your book. So you
Yes, sir.
you've got a professional book reader, or
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay,
sir.
yeah, because it's
There is a professional.
very important that the reader gets into the book and then gets the
Yes.
sense very nicely. Okay, now coming to your book, uh, borrowing from Mr. Hamlet, what comes forth from within volume of your mind and the book. So, Ravi, what is Magic of the Mind about? And what are the various segments of the book?
So the mind can be your friend or it can be a minefield. On an average, we get about 60,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are antipathetic in nature. Now,
Mhm.
how does one tackle them? Either through the traditional techniques which have evolved over the years, say yoga, pranayama. I'm an art of living teacher, meditation, then practicing Sudarshan Kriya, Vipassana. That is one way to combat those thoughts. Or the other way to tackle your mind is by, say, exercising or delving into your interests like painting, writing, reading, some passion. Uh, that is the only way one can get out of the present cesspool we are in and not be weighed down by what happened. What inspired me really to write this was professionally, I had done exceedingly well last 4 years. I was PCO, Principal Chief Operations Manager, Northeastern Railway, and then board found my work to be good, so I was posted on North Central Railway, which is the toughest. I would consider my toughest assignment, where we run your famous train Vande Bharat, and
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Girish Pillai used to monitor its punctuality virtually every day, in fact. And that's so professionally, I had done well. I had written quite a bit, uh, but unfortunately, I lost my parents. First, my father in 2019, and then my mother this year. And I was disturbed and slowly coming out of two tragedies. I went back to the drawing board and collected about 50 articles which could inspire people in the present circumstances and to come out of this quagmire. So
Okay.
essentially, it is how you control your mind, and that is all magic of the mind is. Otherwise, you become a slave of the mind, and then you end up making all kinds of mistakes.
Wonderful. So I get a sense of the book and I would be eagerly waiting for it now. But still, for our viewers, what do you think is the main takeaway from this book? And there are so many self help books available. So, how would you rate this book differently from
So,
all these self help books?
there are 9 segments in this book which
Okay.
would help a person, like jostling with Corona, then say stretching into infinity, where I've talked about yoga, pranayama. Then there's an ode to my parents, how much I'm indebted to them and what they had, how they fashioned my life. Then diving into faith, where I've gone into Hindu philosophy and Buddhism. Then how to attain tranquility. In fact, one of the important things is benefits of speech, sleep, and
Yeah.
meditation. Then I have gone into myself, the dark tunnel within, where I have tried to develop a composed mind. And then something called the monkey mind, where we get all kinds of negative thoughts and how to overcome them. Then vanquishing our flaws. Finally, scale the summit. That is the 9th segment. And I end by the way forward now, 2022. That is
Hmm.
called creation and destruction, Varanasi. And why I chose Varanasi was when I was posted in Northeastern Railway, number of occasions I had gone there. I mean, people go and see the uh, evening arti.
Yeah.
But what really intrigued me was that Assi Ghat. So that was the most intriguing part, which really fascinated me about Banaras. Of course, Banaras is known for its Jamuna Ganga tehzeeb. You have there's so much of variety. It's such a vibrant city. But this particular aspect had always intrigued my mind, that how two absolutely opposite aspects of human life can be witnessed simultaneously. Suppose one goes on to the boat and just sees the spectacle, both the events. So, how does the mind react in such a situation? And that is what all magic of mind is all about. How do we make it magical to achieve something or succumb to the pressures?
Okay. So, with that background and that explanation, I'm sure a lot of readers would be very eager to read your book, Ravi. Now, I'll come to this nagging question. What would you say is your interesting writing quirk? I mean, where do you get your information or ideas for your books? Uh, they say that writing is also a learning and even a reading experience. So, what would be some surprising things you learned while creating books, or rather, what are those surprising things you learned while creating this latest book of yours?
The first thing is that what I'm trying to dwell on developing is to have an unusual twist to the story. Um, on that, I have relied on the Hindu mythology, mythological stories, and Zen stories, and I try to relate them to the present situation, be it corona or current affairs or human lives, and then weave my story around it. So that unexpectedness and what one can call the aha moment. That
Hmm.
I'm trying to work on. And I think slowly I'm perfecting it, trying to achieve some element of perfection because writing is such a lonely profession. And for people to engage an audience, to develop an audience, over a period of time, it has happened. And one feels very elated when suddenly somebody sends a passage of your book, or say the way it happened with Heartbreak at Coffee Shop or my earlier books, and one keeps writing accordingly. So this has been the interesting quirk. Um, to There are three, four aspects. One is one should continuously keep reading, updating your knowledge.
Yeah.
Secondly, I made it a practice to write, say, 1,000 words a day.
Hmm.
Yourself, a former railway officer, you know how tough it is to combine the two. But one of the greatest compliments I received was from a former member of traffic. He said that our AGM, yeah, Mr. AGM, Mr. Malia, maybe you would be knowing him. He said that you are following a very good tradition which was set by Mr. KL Pandey, former additional member commercial, or Mr. Satyaprakash, Mr. Ajay Shukla, these people who were not just bogged down by railway operations and delved into something different. So, theater, music, then writing, they've all been my passions. And I'm grateful to Shri Ravi Shankar who blessed me to write, and I have continued on that. But that main thing is, I want that if that aha moment is there while writing, in fact, while reading itself, one comes to know whether I have achieved that. So
Uh-huh.
here, there are a lot of personal stories in this book which people will find interesting and relate to, and see how they can learn from that and go deeper. And it's not necessarily that one has to be spiritual or religious. One can gain so much from the knowledge. It's basically where we make, where people think, in my opinion, I would segregate it into three parts: information, knowledge, and then wisdom. A large number of us are at the level of information. Then comes knowledge when you add some value to it. But real wisdom is I plus K, in my opinion, with some grace behind you. And then things start happening automatically.
Yeah, there I agree. So you have a lot of people with a lot of wisdom, but they don't base it on information. So it is uninformed wisdom. And of course, there are many informed people who lack wisdom, and that's perhaps even worse. By the way, because you mentioned both Mr. K.L. Pandey and Mr. Ajay Shukla are
Yes,
here, based in Lucknow, and both
yes,
of them have appeared in my programs.
yes, sir.
It was such a
I've seen them. I've seen them.
pleasure hosting them. Okay, my last question, Ravi.
Yes, sir.
Uh, so I know your spiritual leanings, and I know how it has been able to uplift your life. Um, Perhaps even religious leanings. But for someone who's not religious like me, and I can't even say that I am remotely spiritual, though I do like reading mystical poetry, like Ghalib, for example, or Kabir. So, if someone like that, who's not religious or spiritual per se, so how would someone like that bolster his or her mental strength?
The robustness of your mind or in life is basically on faith. Either one has faith in religiosity or spiritualism or in science. In fact, our human brain, often people confuse between brain and mind. Brain is the organ and mind is the consciousness. Either it is left centric, or either the left hemisphere is dominant or the right hemisphere. Now, though there are large number of people who have only the left hemisphere dominant, they are into sciences. Those whose right hemisphere is developed, they are into creative arts. A real genuine person would be one whose both the hemispheres are predominant. And then you skyrocket into doing something exceptional. Like Einstein, I really don't know whether he was a believer. I think he was not. But we know how much he achieved, both in science or in he was a violinist. He used to write. That is what. So a person need not be religious or spiritual, but he should have faith in himself to achieve what is just not possible.
Okay. Okay, Ravi. So, well, you talked about information, wisdom, spirituality. So, with spirituality, to some extent, I'll relate it with heart. So, Uncle Ghalib, my chacha, has said that दिल तो हो अच्छा नहीं है घर दिमाग दिल तो हो अच्छा नहीं है घर दिमाग कुछ तो असबाब तमन्ना चाहिए असबाब तमन्ना means causes wherewithal of yearning. So viewers, we had someone on the show today who has both dil and dimag together. I hope you enjoyed listening to him and you will be eager to read his book soon when it will be released. So thank you very much, Ravi, for joining this program. Viewers, I hope you liked the program. We will be back next Thursday on Straight Drive. Till then, namaskar.